What if I told you there's a book out there, older than a lot of the Bible, but with stories so intense, so different, it got left out of the official scriptures? We're talking about the Book of Enoch, a text that's shrouded in mystery and controversy, and that's exactly where we're diving today. We're going to unpack why this book, which some parts of Christianity actually consider part of their Bible, is considered forbidden by others. We'll see what's inside it, look at where it falls in history, and try to get a grasp on why it still fascinates scholars and people just looking for truth. So what is it about the Book of Enoch that's so captivating and yet so controversial?
Well, imagine a text that's just dropped in your lap, right? And it's full of detailed stories of fallen angels, giants roaming the earth, the Nephilim, and get this, a whole different perspective on the Great Flood than what you're used to.
It's like something straight out of one of those fantasy novels.
Yay.
But this was written centuries before those were even a thing.
Exactly. And what really gets me is that the Book of Enoch is older than a lot of the Bible as we know it. It was around when the Hebrew Bible was being put together. People studied it, talked about it, but then it gets excluded from the Jewish and most of the Christian official collections.
That's wild. It makes you wonder why. If it was such a big deal back then, why was it deemed, I don't know, not right for the official canon?
Oh, it's complicated. There's no simple answer. But a big thing is how the book portrays angels. Like, in the Bible, they're messengers of God, totally divine. But in Enoch, these angels, called watchers, they're different, much more complex. You could even say they act kind of human.
We're not talking about your typical, harp-playing, halo-wearing angel here. What makes these watchers so different?
Imagine these beings, right? Their job is to observe humanity, but they get completely enthralled by what they see to the point where they crave that human connection. Some even get involved in relationships they're not supposed to. This whole thing, how different it is from the typical angel, that's a major reason for the controversy around the Book of Enoch.
Yeah, that's a far cry from just delivering messages. It's no wonder people were raising eyebrows. So the book, it's pushing those boundaries. What else does it do that makes us rethink those old stories?
Well, it really digs into where those giants came from, those Nephilim. The Book of Enoch, it claims these powerful beings were the children of those angel-human relationships. They got a mix of superhuman abilities, but also, according to the book, a tendency to cause mayhem.
It makes you think, were these ancient writers dealing with the same worries we have now? The dangers of knowing too much, of abusing power, of pushing our limits too far.
Without a doubt. And it's not just the Watchers and the Nephilim. The Book of Enoch, it gives you this whole different lens to look at even the most famous Bible stories, like the Great Flood. It presents a new way of looking at why that happened, really focusing on the corruption, the violence that had taken over everything. And guess who's often at the center of it all? The Nephilim.
So this isn't just like a small difference in details. This is a completely different interpretation of those big events, right?
Yep. Exactly. And that brings us to another cool thing about the Book of Enoch, how it's structured. It's not this straightforward story like some books in the Bible. It's more like a bunch of interconnected texts, each one with its own focus, its own style. We got the Book of the Watchers, all about those fallen angels. Then there's the Book of Parables, exploring judgment and redemption. And then there's, get this, the astronomical book.
Wait, hold on. The astronomical book. What is that? Like ancient star charts and stuff?
Bingo. It gives you this look into how ancient people saw the universe. You've got descriptions of how the stars moved, how the sun and moon work, even what looks like an early calendar system. This mix of like early science with religious and moral ideas, that's totally the Book of Enoch.
It's like this book takes everything we think we know about those old religious writings and flips it on its head. It blends history, mythology, cosmology, all these very human questions about good and evil. Knowing too much, it's a lot. But with all this diverse stuff in the book, one big question still hangs there. If it was so widespread, so studied, why did it get excluded from the Bible? What made it so controversial that people called it forbidden?
To get that, we need to look beyond just what the book says, but what it might have meant for the religious scene back then. And that's where things get really interesting.
We're back and, diving deeper into this mysterious Book of Enoch. It really makes you think differently about ancient history and spirituality. Before we took a break, we were trying to figure out why this book became such a point of controversy.
And it makes even more sense when you think about how this book might have shaken things up for the religious leaders back then. Imagine, right, this text going around saying angels aren't what you think, giving a different version of the Great Flood, even presenting like a whole new way to see the universe. It's bound to ruffle some feathers.
Yeah, it's almost like it's holding up a mirror to the people in charge. and showing them a history and a faith that they don't necessarily agree with. And let's face it, throughout history, challenging the people in power rarely ends well.
Exactly. And it's not just that it challenges what people believed. The Book of Enoch also brings up ideas that some people might have thought were a little too out there, theologically speaking.
Oh, you mean like those fallen angels again? The watchers and those relationships they weren't supposed to have with humans.
Yeah.
Yeah, having angels as messengers, that's one thing, but them actually getting involved with humans, having kids with them even, that's a whole different can of worms.
For sure. And it really gets you thinking about, like, the core of human nature, what we're drawn to, where the line is between the divine and the earthly. Those stories, as exciting as they definitely cause debate and worry.
Yeah, it makes you wonder, did those stories maybe hit too close to home for the people in charge back then? Like, were they worried that these stories about forbidden knowledge and unchecked ambition would make people question their authority?
It's definitely possible. But let's switch gears for a second and delve into another part of the Book of Enoch I find really fascinating. It's called the Book of Dream Visions.
Ooh, okay, this is where things get really mystical, right? Visions, symbols, trips through time and space. It sounds like something out of like, a crazy dream, you know?
In a way, you're right. But these aren't your everyday dreams. Enoch describes these super vivid journeys through the cosmos, meeting celestial beings, getting glimpses of heaven and hell. And these visions, they got some of the most powerful, memorable imagery in the whole book.
Like what? Can you give us an example? Make it come alive for us.
All right, well, one that always sticks with me, it describes this huge tree. Its roots, they go all the way down into the earth, and its branches, they reach up and touch the heavens. This tree, Enoch says, it represents the righteous people, those who stay true to their faith and their actions, they nourish the world around them.
Wow, that's powerful. Really symbolic. It reminds me of like the tree of life mentioned in the Bible, the one that symbolizes immortality and like being connected to God. But the Book of Enoch, it doesn't just talk about the good stuff, does it?
You got it.
Yeah.
Just as much as it talks about paradise and goodness, it also gets into the consequences of going down the wrong path, about punishment. Enoch doesn't just mention hell. He goes to detail about it, describing different levels of punishment for different sins.
So it's not just about being a good or bad person. It's much deeper than that, right?
Exactly.
And kind of scarier when you think about judgment in the afterlife.
Exactly. And that leads us to another captivating part of the Book of Enoch, the idea of a Messiah and an apocalypse. Way before these themes pop up in the New Testament, the Book of Enoch talks about a chosen one, a Messiah who will bring about peace and righteousness.
We're so used to those ideas from religious texts that came later. It's mind-blowing to think that people were already exploring them so deeply centuries earlier. Makes you wonder about the traditional timeline of these ideas, you know?
Absolutely. And that's part of what makes the Book of Enoch so captivating. It makes us question what we thought we knew, gives us different viewpoints, and reminds us that people have been asking these big questions about life, death, good, evil, what's up there in the universe, for a very long time.
And through those debates and different points of view, through the back and forth of ideas and interpretations, that's how we often come to understand ourselves and the world in a deeper, more complex way, wouldn't you say?
It's wild to think a book written that long ago still gets people talking like this. We've been checking out the Book of Enoch, Fallen Angels, ancient tastes on the cosmos, even early apocalyptic visions. But what about the markets left? How has this so-called forbidden book actually impacted things?
It's honestly pretty amazing. The Book of Enoch, it's woven itself into our culture. You can see it in art, literature, even, yeah, those conspiracy theories everyone loves.
It's pretty cool when you think about it. All these artists and writers throughout history, maybe they got their ideas from this book. Take Paradise Lost, for instance. Huge poem, John Milton, a classic. That whole thing about Satan falling, humanity getting kicked out of Eden, it borrows a lot from the Book of Enoch. The battles with the angels, the descriptions of heaven and hell, they really line up with Enoch's themes.
Wow, that's really interesting. It adds a whole other dimension to Paradise Lost, knowing that the Book of Enoch might have influenced it. It makes you think, what other works of art might have little bits of this ancient book hidden within them?
Oh, you can find them in paintings, too, like those Renaissance paintings. They often show angels looking kind of different, a little rebellious even.
Yeah.
Seems like those artists were drawing on those watchers from the Book of Enoch. It's like they were drawn to this, well, different side of angels, not just messengers, but complex beings that could do good or bad.
It's almost as if the Book of Enoch was like this secret code, a way for artists to explore themes that were just too taboo back then.
And that brings us to how the Book of Enoch shows up today in conspiracy theories. It's like an underground hit, you know? People who want answers about the universe, they eat this stuff up.
Yeah, I get it. With all that talk of, like, fallen angels and secret knowledge, powerful forces pulling strings behind the scenes, it's the perfect recipe for stories about, like, secret societies, aliens, all that.
Totally. And while, of course, you got to take those theories with a grain of salt, it's still pretty cool to see how those old stories tap into our fascination with the unknown, even today.
I think it's just that human need to dig deeper, to find meaning and connections, even if those connections lead us down some pretty strange paths.
For sure. And the Book of Enoch, whether you take it literally, metaphorically, or whatever, it pushes us to do just that. Question what we assume, look for different perspectives, grapple with the biggies, good, evil, knowledge, our place in all of this.
So as we wrap up our deep dive into the Book of Enoch, what's the biggest takeaway for our listeners? What should they walk away with?
I think the biggest thing is this. Trying to understand things, it's a journey. It's never over. There are always going to be twists, surprises, new discoveries. The Book of Enoch, it encourages us to be curious, to dig into the mysteries of history and faith, and never stop asking questions.
I love that. The Book of Enoch, even though it's controversial, even with those parts that are hard to understand, it reminds us that the past isn't really gone. It still speaks to us through art, through books, even through those weird theories that make us rethink everything. So yeah, keep an open mind. Think critically and never underestimate the power of those old stories. Until next time, keep exploring, keep asking those questions. Who knows what amazing things you'll discover.